What great timing if you, like me, have a startup in mind or even underway. It doesn't have to be a company, product, or service. It might just be an initiative inside your organization that you're launching. How you tell that story is critical to success of your startup endeavor. And that's why I'm excited to have you hear from a guy who's made startup to exit magic for years, including selling one of his companies to eBay for north of $900 million. Welcome to the Business of Story. I'm Park Howell, and I'm delighted that you're joining my conversation with Gregory Shepard, founder of StartupScience.io and author of the new book, The Startup Lifecycle, the definitive guide to building a startup from idea to exit. You'll learn many of the critical steps in how to tell your startup story to attract investors, customers, or simply get your people to buy into your new initiative. I even put Gregory's brand through our new Story Cycle Genie, and you're going to want to hear his take on our startup. I'm so excited because we just wrapped our final beta testing of our Story Cycle Genie. It's the AI agent we created to help you refine your brand story in minutes, not months, and a fraction of the money and effort it takes with the old traditional way of branding, and without the hallucinations and generic crap you get from ChatGPT and other agents. Here's what celebrated international sales consultant and coach Alice Hyman had to say about her experience with the Story Cycle Genie, especially as it relates to bridging the gap between sales and marketing communications.
Talk about this Genie. It's remarkably good. I ran it on my current audience. Like, I want to run it on my podcast. I want to run it on my new audience. You know, what I love about it is for go-to-market, sales, marketing, customer success, it helps that alignment, bridges some of those gaps. You know, the salespeople are always saying, I need some words. They're constantly asking for stuff from marketing. And marketing, you know, they send shit out all the time, but they never tell the salespeople.
Yeah.
They post stuff all the time. They never tell the salespeople. But now it's all in here. Everything you could possibly need as a salesperson from marketing is in here, except for a slick. But if you go, oh, hey, these words are really good, could you put them on a slick for me? Then the marketing person can do it, right? So, and probably if you wanted it to, the AI could do it as well. But I love it. I mean, it's genius, right? I mean, what's not to love about it?
If you'd like to register to be among the first to participate in our launch later this month, and that is the month of March 2025, then check it out at businessofstory.com/storycycle-genie. That's all one word, storycycle-genie. And get this, when you register, you will get free access as a bonus to our ABTs of Storytelling micro-training course right now. That way you can use the ABT to make all of your communication clear, concise, and compelling immediately. Plus, when you refine your brand story in our Genie, you'll understand how to use the ABT in your brand storytelling to entice prospects, incite customers, and ignite your growth. So register now at businessofstory.com/storycycle-genie. Because as startup exit phenom Gregory Shepard points out, all of your success starts with how well you tell your story.
Pitching your business is telling a story, straight, full stop, right? That's exactly what it is. And if you don't tell the story appropriately, then the story doesn't make sense. It's like telling a joke with no punchline. People don't laugh at the end, right? And I think that everybody is guilty of this. If you are trying to do your pitch deck yourself and you're not taking advice or mentoring from somebody like Park here, it's like being inside of a bottle and not being able to read the label, right? You just can't do it. Sometimes it's hard to see the forest through the trees.
Known as the entrepreneur's entrepreneur, Gregory Shepard has built and sold 12 businesses in biotech, transit tech, ed tech, and martech. He's a Forbes book author and contributor and has been featured or quoted in publications like Fortune, Entrepreneur, The New York Observer, The Deal, and Thrive Global. A recipient of 4 private equity awards for transactions between $250 million to $1 billion, Greg has appeared on TV, radio, and popular podcasts like this one right here. He's also been a TEDx and keynote speaker at multiple universities and conferences worldwide. Greg is a Fulbright Scholar Award recipient and is here today to share his approach to the startup lifecycle to help you increase the likelihood of success with all of your endeavors. Please welcome to the Business of Story, my friend, Gregory Shepard. Greg, welcome back to the Business of Story.
Thank you so much for having you. I really, really appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
Oh, it's so great to see you again. We met, 2 years ago now at the ACE Tech conference up in Whistler,
Right.
British Columbia. And we kind of became fast friends after that. And I did a little bit of training on your startup science platform there, webinar with you. I had you on the show about a year ago. I love what you're doing. I mean, come on, you're like the king of startups and exits. And now you showed up with this brand new book that I've been using for my own startup, the Startup Lifecycle. So it's just great to have you back on the show and tell us a little bit about what's been happening as of late.
Yeah, I mean, I finally got the book published after 4 years of work. And the book's going really well. The sales are good. The publisher seems to be reasonably happy, if they're ever happy with the sales. And I definitely have gotten a lot of my LinkedIn is blown up. I've had a really hard time just keeping up with my LinkedIn messages. But I wanted to say, in terms of you, Park, that when I saw you speak at Whistler that you mentioned the first time, you're an amazing speaker. If there's people listening that need a speaker, this guy is really, really good. I mean, there was a lot of us speaking there, and he had a standing ovation, and people were writing notes feverishly. So I just wanted to plug you for a second because I think it's worth it for those folks that are listening that are in need of a speaker.
Well, I appreciate that, Greg. I'm blushing on this other end. People can't see me doing that, but that's very kind of you. If we were to go into your history, it would take 3 shows to get through it. In 1 minute, can you give them the quick backstory about your amazing startup and exit lifestyle?
Sure. So I started building companies, around 35 years ago. I've built and sold 12 companies, won 4 private equity awards for transactions between $250 million and $1 billion, have done a total of 27 transactions, including those that I've assisted with as a consultant or that were in my portfolio of my own investments. And I love it. It's a lot of fun. I mean, the exit part is the best part, I love when people come to me and they're like, hey, my business is ready. I want to sell it. And then I work with them from there and exit. I've done 2 this year already. So this year is going really, really well.
Now, do I have it correct that you sold 1, if not 2 companies to eBay for north of $900 million?
Yeah, it was 2 companies to eBay Enterprise Marketing Solutions. That's like a part of them. They operate with all these like little they're big companies, but yeah, it was part of a $925 million transaction. And then right after that, I sold them another one. So the one was the big one. And then I sold them another one like 3 months later, I believe. It was like 3 months later. And then I became the chief strategy officer for eBay Enterprise Marketing Solutions. And it's crazy. I actually have my business card right here.
There it is.
Yeah. I just found it in my, I was cleaning out a drawer. And and then after that, I became the CTO because I created this big strategy and they were like, well, you're going to have to execute the strategy. So this whole process took like 3 years. And then I went into politics after that for a little bit. And then I started on the book.
Oh, wow. Well, in all your spare time, too, and I learned a lot about you in reading the Startup Lifecycle, about you climbing El Capitan. I mean, I couldn't believe that as I was sitting splayed out in my recliner reading your book, picturing you on El Capitan.
Yeah, it was. So what I do, Park, is every year since I was 18, I choose one thing that I think is going to be impossible for me. And keeps me tuned and it keeps me in the struggle. And that's what you need when you're starting startups, right? You need to have this threshold for pain, that not a lot of people have if you're going to do startup after startup because of the stress and anxiety and all the stuff. So I choose these things, and I've climbed El Capitan, Half Dome, the Castlin Tower, the east face of Longspeak, among many other things. I've wrestled crocodiles, bullfighting. I mean, I've done this year I'm doing fire walking.
Wait. You did bullfighting? Where'd you do that?
I did bullfighting in Mexico. I did crocodile wrestling in Florida. I drove IndyCar. I swam with sharks twice, one without a cage and one with a cage.
Was that when you were in politics?
That yeah, they are like piranha. Yeah, that is absolutely true. It was so bad that I quit and I would never go back and do it again. It was just a horrendous experience, to be candid.
Well, I can only imagine a guy like you that builds startups in the fast-paced world of entrepreneurship, then getting mired in the slog of politics and politicians and dopes and people that don't know what the hell they're talking about, but they're good talkers. I could imagine that would just completely blow your mind.
Yeah, I told people it was like trying to run through peanut butter. Just painful.
Chunky peanut butter. So in your book, the other thing that I really liked about it, the startup cycle, is that how often you share personal stories that you have been through outside of the business world, but what you learned from those stories that you've applied to the business world.
Yeah, everything I applied to the business world. In fact, I was meditating at the beach. I live in San Diego, right? So I go to the beach a lot and meditate. So I was meditating at the beach this weekend, yesterday, and there's some dolphins out there. And you can tell there's dolphins because there's this boiling of the water and you see all these birds diving in, right? And I thought to myself, this is a feeding frenzy. And there are a lot of startups, and startups are, they don't have anything, right? So they need software, they need everything. And I was thinking that's a feeding frenzy. So anything that generates leads is a feeding frenzy. So watching the dolphins playing in the ocean with the birds brought me back to startups. And I see that everywhere I go, everything I do. Even I was even sitting there having a handful of sand in my hand, and I was like, there's more startups happening right now than there is sand in my hand. There's a startup every 10 seconds. So it's just fascinating. I do that with everything. I can't seem to stop. I think it's just become part of me at this point.
Well, you have a bit of a superpower that the vast majority of us do not have, and that is synesthesia, neurodiversity, that you see the world, it sounds like, and you talk about it in your book, differently than most of us. You see patterns.
Yeah. I mean, I was diagnosed with autism when I was a little kid, but then my mom decided not to do anything with it because she didn't want me to be labeled. So I found out when I was in my 30s, and then I've been diagnosed 4 times since then, just because I didn't believe it. I think I thought that people with autism, you should be able to look at them and go, oh, that person has autism. But it's not the case. It's internal. It's not external. So it's not like somebody's missing an arm and you can tell that they're missing an arm. It's because you're neurodivergent. Everything's going on in your own brain. So I have this thing called savant syndrome. I hate that they put syndrome in there, but it means that I have a specialty, like something that I'm exceptionally good at, but that also means that it comes with other things that I'm really horrible at. Like I read and write at like a 4th grade level. I'm like a child. It's chimpanzees can read and write better than me.
Well, now, wait a minute, Gregory. Your book certainly doesn't read at a 4th grade level.
Yeah, it took me 4 years. So
Well, it was worth it.
yeah, I mean, I bet Park, I bet you seem to sling out a book in a year or two, so you are light years ahead of where I am with that.
Well, I love the book. And so let's jump into it a little bit. Why did you write it in the first place?
So I told you I was in politics, and what I was trying to do in politics is move money down to startups because I believe that startups not only are the best way for equality, but I believe they're the best way to move our whole world forward, right? Like if you look at everything from the podcasts that we're on to the mics that we're on to the computers you use to the phone you use, I mean, everything around us came from startups. It didn't come from corporates. Entrepreneurs build it and corporates buy it and bring it to the masses. So I thought, is there a better way for somebody like me who grew up without any money to make it than startups? And I couldn't think of anything. Is there a way that somebody that wasn't in the startup ecosystem had the ability to create something that truly changed the world, like AI, right? Like Chat GTP? There isn't. So then I thought, even Microsoft that bought or invested into ChatGPT is itself a startup or was a startup at some point. Apple, Tesla, Oracle. I mean, you could go Adobe. All these companies were at some time startups. So I started to think, if I really want to affect the world, and it just happens to be that I'm good at doing it, that I should try to get government to move more money down to startups. Well, they disagreed and they said, well, there's a 80 to 90% failure rate in startups. So we're not going to put any more money. So then I said, well, I'm going to do a research project to find out why, when, and how founders were failing. And then I'm going to show you guys this data. And then I'm going to prove that we can do something about it with some government money. Well, they declined me. And then I took all that data and wrote the book. So that's how I got started. And then after that, I created the platform because I wrote like 5,800 pages, and there was thousands of pages of transcripts and everything. And I was like, I got to give founders access to all this. So I created the platform, put QR codes in the book so they could scan it and go learn, for free. And that was sort of my way of giving back. I felt like I had been taking and not giving, like making money for myself. And a lot of the products that I sold were things that were probably built by in emerging markets by young kids and thrown in dumpsters and became landfill. And I just felt really bad about everything. And I was like, I'm going to dedicate the rest of my life to helping startups with impact, specifically social and environmental impact. And so that's why I did everything I'm doing.
And that's kind of your big why, isn't it? That's driving you is the economic divide, the lack of opportunity for a lot of different communities out there who have good ideas but just don't have a vehicle to be able to build that startup and go. And to, as you say, the social impact of sustainability, environmental impact of do good with your startup, help people and not hurt the planet at the same time.
Yeah, you can make money doing good and you don't have to feel bad about it. It's possible I called it altruistic capitalism. I wrote an article for Forbes about it where I was like, you can leverage capitalism for altruistic outcomes. You can use it that way. And we see that around us. You see electric cars, whether you like Elon Musk or not, he did bring electric cars into the world. So, everybody else came out with them afterwards. So here's a guy who, was able to change the trajectory of when electric cars would start to take hold through a startup. And, you can look around us, even the iPhone that's in a lot of people's hands right now as they listen to this podcast, that was Steve Jobs, so these are all startup people that are changing the world. It's not big companies and it's not politicians and it's not the uber rich. This is regular people like you and me sitting in their basement or sitting in a bedroom on a folding table trying to crank out a startup. Those are the people that are changing the world.
And those are the people you were helping with your book.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you here's the thing is that I know that social impact is a lot to do with making sure that everybody's included and that there's no discrimination, and making sure that the money helps level the playing field in terms of economic impact. And so I thought, well, if I had the ability to help these people, that would be amazing. Well, who's starting companies? It's not rich people. These people that are starting companies are trying to become rich. They're not rich people. So therefore, it tells me that by helping these startups, I'm helping with income equality. And investors and in the world of startups, they don't care what color you are. They don't care what your gender is or whatever. If you come up with a good business, people will back you, right? So that's the social side. And on the environmental side, you have people coming up with things that are more efficient. Like the biggest thing right now in startups is industrial transformation. This includes AI, this includes robotics, and it includes helping the environment. So you see a lot of people that are now trying to change to help the environment, not because of, the political pressure, but because they know that we all share this little earth together. And if we don't take care of it, none of us are going to have a place to live. And it doesn't matter how much money you have if you have no place to live.
Yeah, that's so true. And you as you're going through that, the inspiration back about going into politics, trying to get that money to feed down into these companies, showing them, doing the research and showing to them. It occurred to me of a quote that I love is you can lead a leader to knowledge, but you can't make them think. So you got these politicians around there not thinking about it, not really caring about it, or not understanding it, and kind of blow you off, which leads, to this great book here. Out of all of the great successes, and then I want to dive into the book even more, of all the great successes that you've had, Greg, what has been your one biggest business failure?
So during COVID, yeah, this is definitely a big one. So during COVID, I funded a company that died, and I lost 1.5 million. So I funded this company, and it couldn't support. I did sell it, but I lost 1.5 million in the process. But it was my first time I'd ever lost money on building a business or investing in a business, which I know is really unusual. And a lot of people listening are going to go, boo hoo, you, right? But it was for me a real painful, I went into depression. I was like, who am I to be telling people anything? How come, yeah, I shouldn't even be telling anybody. I can't believe I did this. I was just the imposter syndrome that we all have, the insecurities that we all have were like turbo boosted when that happened, even though it was caused from COVID. It's a weird phenomenon that you get into when if you're not used to, if you're not used to failing, you should get used to failing because it's going to happen at some point.
Well, it reminds me of this book that I read a couple of months ago that I now think is an absolute perfect 1-2 punch with yours. And you probably know Albert Savoya from Stanford. He wrote the book, The Right It, Why So Many Ideas Fail and How to Make Sure Yours Succeeds. So I love this because I read this as we're doing our startup with our Story Cycle Genie, and I've applied what I learned from this book into our prototyping and our beta testing we're doing right now. And then I see the natural progression into your book of going, okay, well, we've proved out our concept and we know there's a need out there in a market. How do I take it to market without making major missteps? And so it's a really nice 1-2 punch.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, I think that what I was trying to do was I was trying to take the founder failure and success data that I had, and I was trying to, which took 5 years of research. Like it was no joke. Like this was a huge amount of research and interviews and all of this stuff. We're talking about real like roots research, not like just looking at case studies, looking at other people's research, but doing the research yourself. Right. So that part of it was an immense process. So taking that, and then I wrote that whole book. Actually, one of the reasons why it took me so long is because I wrote that book And then I read it and I was like, this is depressing. And, I can't just tell them why, when, and how founders are failing and stuff. I have to help them understand how not to, and what are the steps they need to go through, and what's in front of them down the line, so I can prevent the failure instead of just talking about it. So then I went back and wrote all that stuff and then merged the other facts in there. And it turned out, I think, pretty well. So
It really did. So let's dive into some of that, some of your insights. Let's begin with why are startups failing?
So there are some top reasons, but they're not the real reasons. So there's common reasons. They'll say, "Oh, I couldn't get funded," right? But that just makes you ask, well, why couldn't you get funded?
Yeah, that's just
Well,
a symptom, right?
yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. And all of the common data that's out there are all symptoms. Like, I couldn't get funded. Why couldn't you get funded? Well, I couldn't get funded because, I had a bad pitch deck. Why did you have a bad pitch deck? What was in the pitch deck? What were you pitching, your idea or your concept? This is where you come in, right? It's like really understanding how to put together a good story. They would say things like, well, I didn't know that this was going to happen. And the startup lifecycle tells them what's going to happen. So there's two things you need to know. You need to know where you are and where you're going when you build a business. Pretty much everything you need to know where you are and where you're going. And the problem was there was nothing out there that showed them where they're going and what that's going to look like and what they need to do. So I did the life cycle with that. The other reason, and this is a big one, is obviously bad decisions, right? I made some bad decisions. Well, hold on a second. Who gave you, how come you made the bad decisions? Oh, I got bad advice. Okay, who gave you the bad advice? The crazy thing, and this is not a popular data stat, but it's true, is that the bad decisions came from number one, investors. Investors have a lens on their glasses that makes them see the world a very specific way. If you fail, you're just a statistic. But if you fail to them, you're just a statistic. But to you, I mean, this is your life, right? You're like, oh, I did all this, invested, mortgaged my house, whatever it is that you did to make it happen. So what I did is I said, okay, well, make sure that you understand that you're the practitioner and your investor is just that. They're just an investor. Most of the investors, so I interviewed 1,100 investors, and it was like 2% of them that actually had ever done a startup. So they're advising founders who are in the middle of a startup on how to do a startup that they've never done. They've been an investor. So their information is third party, right? So it's like somebody saying, listen, I'm going to teach you how to ride a bike, but all I've done is read papers on riding bikes. I've never done it myself. You're still going to have a problem. And so they were number one because their advice was always catering towards their ends, not necessarily towards the practitioner's ends. The second one was actually mentors. And this is because the group of mentors, when I started looking at mentors, I started to learn that there are what I call one-hit wonders. So somebody who started a startup, they got a real big tailwind that pushed them onto the shore, like a wave pushing a log onto the shore, and they exited, and now they're out, mentoring people. But didn't have the adversity. They didn't have all the challenges. They got a big tailwind and they sold. They got lucky, basically, right? The other one is the mentors who are consultants. So they used to work at IBM and they have this big fancy title, and then they step in and they start trying to help these founders. But that again is totally different than actually doing a startup. And typically they like to hire people because they're used to managing a team. So they get into the startup, they consult them, they tell them, you need to hire all these people. The startup runs out of money. Because they didn't get the results yet, the founder is sitting there holding the bag and they can't get funded and the thing goes out of business. In fact, 57% of them go out of business in the first 18 months. And the rest of them go out of business in the following 5 years for things they did in the first 18 months. So that first 18 months is really critical. Well, who are they working with the majority of the time? Investors, mentors, and accelerator incubator program managers was in third place. So you ask yourself, wait a minute, why are these three people who all have a vested interest and all really want to make it work, why are they giving them bad advice? They're not doing it on purpose, obviously. They're getting bad information themselves. So they're taking that information that they've heard and they're moving in. We all know about the misinformation that you get from the internet. So a lot of people are doing their research online and they're taking that as gospel and they're passing that over to their founders when it's really third-party information without having actually experienced it themselves. And so a lot of the problems are surfacing from that. In fact, most of them are surfacing from that. It's painful to watch, especially when it's fixable, which is why I built the platform and wrote the book, because I was like, I can help these people. I can help with this problem. My goal is to drop the failure rate by 10%.
Yeah, when you say the platform, that's your startup science platform, right? Where people can go in and get training plus your book.
Yeah. Yeah. So Startup Science, you can go in there as a founder and it's free for you to go in. There's investors, there's grants, there's courses, there's templates, it's the entire whole startup ecosystem in one place. It's a pretty good place for you to go if you're a founder.
You had talked about, Greg, one of the mistakes they make is, like what's in your pitch deck? What if that's not working for you? Why is it not working for you? And you had that experience firsthand that you talked about in your book, going out to Manhattan and kind of getting blown up there.
Oh man, it was awful. I went out there. I was pitching an environmental applied biotechnology company that I had way before it was something that anybody even cared about. And I went in to pitch them, and there was a bunch of people in the room, and they just started walking out right in the middle of the pitch, just leaving me there. And then finally, there was like two guys left. And I just asked them, I said, listen, it's obvious that I have completely failed here. Can you tell me what I did wrong? And then the guy said, let's go to lunch. And he told me in lunch that basically what it drilled down to is that my pitch talked about facts. It was too pragmatic. It was too logical. It wasn't emotional enough. It didn't trigger anybody to go, ooh, that kind of thing. And he said, listen, if you're watching a movie and there's no emotional aspects to the movie, you're going to stop watching the movie. Your brain's just going to stop paying attention. And there's a guy named Oren Clef who wrote a book called Pitch Anything. He's a really good writer. And he studied the brain and like how the brain reacts to things, and I read this afterwards, and then I read your book and I was like, oh man, I missed the boat, right? Like I missed the boat on, this is like years later when I learned the lesson that, pitching your business is telling a story, straight, full stop, right? Like that's exactly what it is. And if you don't tell the story appropriately, then the story doesn't make sense. It's like telling a joke with no punchline. People don't laugh at the end, right? And so, and I think that everybody is guilty of this. If you are trying to do your pitch deck yourself and you're not taking advice or mentoring from somebody like Park here, it's like, we were talking about this before the show. It's like being inside of a bottle and not being able to read the label, right? You just can't do it. Sometimes it's hard to see the forest through the trees.
It really is. And all the startups that I've ever worked with, always the first hurdle you have to get over is that founder hurdle of I've invented something amazing and everybody is just going to buy it. So their stories are all about what they make, which nobody actually really cares about what they make. They only care about what they make happen in people's lives. And that's a big paradigm shift for people.
Yeah, that's genius. And it's true. What does it mean to me? Like there's three things I tell people when they're pitching. I say there's three things that I used to look for when I was filling up my fund with startups. It's why me, why this, why now, right? Like why am I the person that you should invest in? Why is this the thing that you should invest in? And why now? Why is this the time that you should do it? And those things are emotional triggers, right? Like why this? Oh, wow, this is hot. This is the thing going on, right? Why me? Well, because, I'm amazing and I've done this and I've done that. And I have the secret sauce and I know all the details of the industry, whatever. And then why now is the sense of urgency, right? Like if you don't do this now, and that is the combination that got everything from, if you look back in history, to big data, and then IoT, and now we're talking about AI. And before that, it was robotics, right? So you think about these big trends that happen, those big trends take on because of the why now, right? Why now? AI, everybody is like all over AI. Why now? Why now with AI? Because it's coming to life, right? Why this? Well, because it's, whether using agentic AI or generative AI, man, these things have massive benefits. And then you're left to why me? And you're like, I'm a subject matter expert, blah, 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 blah. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I absolutely do. And I love that. Why me? Why this? Why now? And like I said, your book is such perfect timing for me because we have our startup in our Story Cycle Genie, where we've taken my 20 plus years using the Story Cycle system to grow brands, literally by as much as 600% when they follow the process. But that process is time consuming. It can be expensive. It's resource intensive. And we've bottled it in an AI agent, and we created the Story Cycle Genie. And in fact, in preparation for this interview, I took your brand by uploading your URL, your LinkedIn page, and your page on your book, or actually the Amazon.com site for your book and the Harvard Press site for your book, loaded it up into the Genie, and in under 3 minutes, it gave me the entire brand story for how you were showing up in the world.
Yeah, it was amazing. By the way, I was blown away. Like I told you before the show, I was like, this is crazy. Like it's really, I mean, I know it took you a year and the one I used as a beta, but I was already impressed. I mean, like it was really good.
Thank you. How accurate did you feel it was to your brand and the way you're showing up in the world?
I think it was really, really accurate in terms of like, this is how the world sees me. And it told me where the holes are too, right? Like if I don't want the world to see me that way, if I read it and I was like, yeah, I don't want to show up like this here or like that over here or whatever, then it shows you, it points out to you where you need to tune your brand story. It's really good. It's like getting an audit.
Yeah, I guess I hadn't thought about it that way. It is. It gives you that audit, but then you can go in the Genie and refine any part of that story that you want or you aspire it to be, and then it gives you all of the story elements. It gives you all the guides on what to do with it next, how to operationalize it immediately, and it gets you super focused on your vision, on your mission, and how to really tell a clear and compelling brand story that is uniquely your own.
Yeah. I can't wait to use it for my personal brand, like to do a bio, right? Because what it does is it shows you how you're showing up, but it also sort of gives you like a lot of like little chunks that you could use for a bio or for a mission statement or for your about page on your website or whatever, right? You can go in and tune it. And like you said, I think it's really cool. I mean, I've seen AI everywhere, all over the place now, like everybody else has. And it's rare that I see the application of AI actually produce something useful. A lot of times it's like, oh, that's really cool. And then you don't use it, right? Your thing is useful. It's actually a useful tool. So I just can't wait till you get out of beta and I can like go ham on this thing.
Give me a month. We're almost there, but I am going to send you a link so you can get in and play with it a little bit. But when I went in and was reading through your book, I was thinking, okay, how can I apply this to my startup? And I'm here on page 88 right now, the product what statements. And you spell it out very easily. Product what statements is the product name, uses descriptions and features, and then insert the benefits received. So I wrote a very quick one for the Story Cycle Genie, and I'm wondering if you'd coach me on it.
Yeah, that sounds fun. Sure, let's do it.
Here's my product what statement. The Story Cycle Genie uses AI to craft a clear and compelling brand story strategy in minutes, not months.
That's really good. I would add in how flexible it is. And how you can play with it. Because to me, it was like, yeah, it created it right away, but everybody with AI now wants to be able to edit what they do in AI. And what you're left with, if you do it yourself, is having to cut and paste the thing back in again. But you're able to do the whole process in your app. So I think that that's really important. So flexible, you're able to go in there as a human and make tweaks to it and then have it readjust. I think that's really important. And I think the why is really important. Like, why is this thing so great? Because of the content that you can create, because you can do your bio if you're a speaker, or if you're a CEO, you need to do your bio, because you can do your about page. I think the only thing is I think that there are so many use cases, and I think that the use cases should be included in your why.
Okay. That's good to know. I was trying to keep it as short and sweet to the point because as I started doing the what statements, it started getting a little bit longer. For instance, the story, the emotion that we're going for, that I see in people's eyes and I hear from them, is to enthrall them, because they go through and they're like, this is like magic. It's like I've got a direct pipeline to your brain, Park. It's like you're sitting across from me as all this stuff is coming out. And so to enthrall the user, that creates a brand story that will enthrall their colleagues, enthrall their customers, enthrall the communities they serve.
That is really good.
Good.
That is really good. Yeah. I mean, people invest in people, not in companies.
Yeah. So my what statement became this, Greg. The Story Cycle Genie AI agent harnesses the proven story cycle system that has helped grow brands by as much as 600% to help businesses create a clear and compelling brand story strategy in minutes, not months, at a fraction of the cost of traditional branding processes, providing insights and content that can be operationalized immediately to accelerate your growth.
That is damn good.
Good.
Tell me your AI did that.
I did. No, I did that.
You did?
I did that.
Yeah, it's really good.
I will tell you, though, the AI did give me a great line, and it was this. We took Park's 20 plus years, experienced it, and bottled it in an AI agent we call the Story Cycle Genie. So I love the fact that it said, and bottled it in. I had not thought about that, which then led me to a tagline of, now you can let your brand genius out of the bottle with the Story Cycle Genie. And you've given me another idea about that, inside the bottle and can't see the label. If that's where you are right now, let's rub the genie. Let's let it release your story so you can see it and now share it with the world.
Yeah, that's genius. That's really genie us. That's really brilliant. Yeah, I think that's amazing. I mean, I can't think of something that's more frustrating, more difficult for people in the startup ecosystem outside of their story.
Yeah.
Their pitch, whether they're pitching for customers or pitching for money to raise capital, that is, or pitching new employees to get really good talent. Like, the story is the foundation of everything, and the fact that you have this new tool is just amazing, because it can be done really quick and you could iterate on it. You could have different stories for different things. You could have a story for this product and a story for that product, and so on and so forth. I think it's amazing. I actually want to integrate it into our platform.
Oh, I would love that. And, I come from the advertising world, having run an agency for 20 years. And I was just telling someone yesterday, I go, you know what? This is going to put a lot of agencies out of business. I hate to say that, but AI is going in that direction. And why this works so well is it is totally focused on your story, and it can literally create any content you need in the written form at the moment for sales presentations, websites, videos, LinkedIn campaigns, social posts, you name it. And it's all coming from your voice and from your specific brand archetype.
Yeah, AI is absolutely. Agencies are going to pay dearly for this technology. Lawyers, accountants, consultants. I mean, there's going to be a lot of people that AI is going to displace. It's funny because if you look at it, before that, it was the blue collar, right? It was robotics and automation on that side. And now it's going after the white collar. What I mean is this whole technology transformation.
Yeah.
It's really interesting because the white collar people were saying, oh, they'll find another job, right? And they were, blowing it off. And now they're the ones that are sitting there going, what am I going to do? It's a
Mhm.
fascinating, we are changing the landscape of our emotional planet. And what I think eventually, and I'm just going to digress for 1 second because I think this is really fun conversation, but I think that we're going to end up working less hours and doing more, because the only way to keep everybody in a job is if you work less hours. So it takes more people to get something done, but then you need efficiency. Well, AI, robotics, etc., will handle the efficiency part. So where do you end up with? Less job, more less work, time, behind a desk, and more efficiency. And I think that's going to
Mhm.
be amazing, right?
Oh, I agree. I mean, I stopped doing brand development because it was so exhausting and it took up so much of my time and my mental capacity to do the discovery, the research, the brainstorming, the customer conversations and meetings that they would get frustrated at because you're really drilling down to get this core information you need. And literally, Greg, it would take months. I mean, months to do that. And now it can happen before your eyes in minutes. And it's not meant to now replace the writers out there and whatever, but it is meant to replace the blank page, to replace the blank stare, to give you inspiration and real world insight that you can leverage immediately and not have to go and do all the digging for. Now, you do want to go and vet it a bit, but what we're finding, and as you saw with that 17-page document I sent you that literally was created in about 7 minutes, that all the insight is there you need to now bring your human approach to really refining that story.
Yeah, I agree. And it's crazy how human it sounds. That thing that you sent me, I thought you did it. I was like, did he actually do this or did he write this? I was like, that's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
I didn't write one thing in there other than what you saw and read. Those were my instructions on what to do with this next piece of information. But all of the detail, the 95% of it, all came from the genie. And it's been written such with the prompting of it to be able to take the voice of the customer of the website as it saw with yours and repeat it back to you with its findings.
Yeah, I think it's amazing. I mean, I think, AI to this point wasn't around when I wrote the book, but I'll tell you, it would have made it a lot easier than when you're staring there at a flashing cursor, trying to figure out, okay, chapter two. You do the outline first, but even after you do the outline, you still have to start somewhere, you know? And I found with AI, because I'm writing a couple more books right now, you can put something in it, it'll get you started, so it'll help you get going at least,
Mm-hmm.
which is sometimes just what you need, something to help you, some launch pad. I think that the AI generation is going to drastically change, and now people are learning how to use AI. Like because it only spits out whatever questions you ask, so you have to learn how to ask it the right questions to get the right answers and edit it and stuff like that. So it's fascinating to see how people are starting to change. Even my 20-year-old daughter is like in there using AI for stuff on the regular, she has an app on her phone, like it's a tool they use. It's incredible. I
Mm-hmm.
use it probably 40 times a day. I don't even know, constantly. Yeah, I think it's really good. And I think that it will help people a lot with the startup life cycle. I took the book and I put it into an AI and I made it so it's conversational so you can like talk to the book. As far as I know,
That's so cool.
it's the first conversational book as far as I know. I don't know if there's any other ones out there, but that's an example of a combination of human and technology. Same with you and your product.
Well, you talk about the 7 phases of the startup life cycle, from value creation in the first 2 phases, which is the vision and the product. That's where what we are pretty much done with now. And now stage number 3 is the go to market. And then stages 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 are value capture and creation. And you've got this sort of spread over 3 to 5 years, which I love because it's not like a 15-year process if you do it right and follow your system. What I found interesting, I hadn't thought about, I've certainly have heard about that idea of start with the end in mind of what does that exit look like? And you in the book talked about 2 categories of exits. Would you expound on that? Because that was a real learning for me. I had no idea about that until I read it.
Yeah, so there's synergies, right? And there's 2 categories of synergies, make money and save money, right? So when you're selling a company to somebody else, they're either buying it to make more money or to save money. That's what it always comes down to. And sometimes it depends on the market. If it's a bull market, then most of the time people are going to be looking for make money. If it's a bear market, most of the time people are going to be looking for save money. That doesn't mean that you have to change your business. It just means you have to change your story. So you just have to change how you're talking about it, right? So when you look at the majority of the synergies are to make money. And so that company that wants to buy your company is buying your company to increase what you call your CAC to LTV, your customer acquisition cost to your lifetime value, right? So the lifetime value is how much money that customer is spending with you during the time frame that they are your customer, right? And then the CAC is how much you paid to get that customer. So for these big companies that buy other companies, they're not as interested in how many customers you have. They probably have 20 times, 100 times, 1,000 times more customers. What they want to make sure is that your product will be purchased by their existing customers because they've already paid the customer acquisition cost. So every time they add a new product, they grow the lifetime value. So their CAC to LTV ratio goes up. So that synergy is the make money synergy. The other one is just bottom line EBITDA savings, right? So a friend of mine sold Amazon a company that's Amazon Robotics, right? He sold them a company that helps with their warehousing. That was a save money strategy, versus a make money strategy. So it's really interesting if you think about it that way, then you know where you're going. And what I mean by where you're going is when you're starting out with your exit strategy, if you think to yourself that companies are not buying your company because they need your customers, they're buying your company because they want to sell their customers your product. What that tells you then is, would you ever start a product without having a customer? I mean, that would be ridiculous, right? It'd be illogical to say, I'm going to build a business and then I'm going to see who can buy it, So your company is really just a big product to your acquirer, just like your product is just something to your customer. So what you have to do in the very beginning is you have to make sure that your customer and your acquirer's customer are the same customer. If they are the same customer, then you can get an exit because you know that you're going to grow their lifetime value. But it's not like you can do that at the last minute. It's not like you work on your company for 5 years and you go, okay, now let's make our customer match the acquirer. You've already got a customer. You've already proven who you are to a certain extent. So you have to start that out at the very beginning in order to prove to the acquirer that your customer and their customer are the same and that they'll buy the product that you're trying to get them to purchase from you. Does that make sense? So it's really
it does.
important.
And when I was reading your book, I really got the sense that you were leaning towards that strategic acquisition is typically more profitable, meaning they are buying your product to be able to then resell to their customers versus just the financial acquisition of you're making a bunch of money, we want to add that to our cash flow.
Right. Because you can sell those faster and you can sell those raising less money, which means that you're diluted less, which means you make more, even though you're selling them early. So, people will sell a company for 100 million and make 5 million, or you can sell a company for 10 million and make 5 million. The difference is how much of your life did you spend building the $100 million company? Did you spend 10 years, 15 years? And how many of those can you do in a lifetime? Right? It's only a handful, unless you do a bunch at the same time like I did. But normally you have to, you're 10 years in, what are you going to do? 3 of those in your whole life? You sell them in 5 years. Now you can do 6 of them in a whole life. And you get more of the company because you've raised less money because you didn't need to, because you really just have to validate that the acquirer's customer wants to buy your product. That's really all you have to set is that precedent. As soon as you set that precedent, you're going to be on the road to sell. I mean, I sold one earlier this year, actually, with zero customers, right? They just wanted to see that it would work. They had one pilot program go through, and that was it. No paying customers, just a pilot. Let's see, in 2019, I sold one that had 2.2 million in revenue for 50 million, right? And it
Wow.
was just because they had a few customers, a handful of customers. I think they literally had a handful of customers, and those customers matched the acquirer's customers dead on. And the acquirer had thousands of customers. So they knew as soon as they bought this, it was going to be worth 200, 500 million. So this is where the investor, bad advice comes from investor. Investor would sit there and go, no, sit it out, get more customers, keep going, keep going, keep going. Well, every time you start a business, there's a fuse that you lit. And whether you know it or not, there's competitors, there's other things at play, the market conditions. Who knew about COVID? Who knew about wild recessions happening and big swings happening and political turbulence happening like what's happening right now? Like, who knows this stuff is going to happen? You don't know until it hits you. So why do that? You're here on this planet for a limited amount of time. Build the company, sell it as soon as you can, and go on your merry way. Do another startup or go relax or whatever you want to do. But it doesn't.
Or go bullfighting.
Yeah, go bullfight. But it doesn't make sense to hold on to these things for as long as the investors want them to, because all they're after is their gains. And the bigger the company gets, the more they can have assets under management, right? So if they raise 20 million for you now, I got assets under management of 20 million. That's another problem called overvaluation that investors are guilty for, is causing overvaluation by getting into the capital trap. But, the bottom line is that, you build the company, you get the customers to prove to the acquirer that their customers will buy your product, and then you try to sell the company to them straight away. And they want that too.
Yeah. Well, you have so much amazing knowledge in this book, and thank you so much, Greg, for coming on the show. The Startup Lifecycle, the definitive guide to building a startup from idea to exit. You can get it on Amazon. Where else should we send people to learn more about what you're doing and the book and startup science?
My website is gregoryshepard.com, and the startupscience.io is the other website. If you're a founder and you're trying to get access to the tools, you go to gregoryshepard.com, click on founders, and you can get access for free. If you're a startup assistance program or something like that, then you go to Startup Science and you go into one of the other options there, depending on who you are. And that's how you get a hold of me.
Well, that's amazing. And I will get you the link over to the Story Cycle Genie with this top secret password so you can get in there, because you said you wanted to run your own personal brand through it.
Yeah, I do. I can't wait, actually. I'm excited.
Well, I'll get that right over to you. But thank you so much for coming back to the show and sharing your wisdom with our listeners.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you.
What an amazing dude. His success is like almost unfathomable to the rest of us. And, he does have that superpower of being able to see patterns in the world. And he's got the work ethic to make something work even when he's hitting the darkest of times. Plus, he's got the courage to go and do it, right? So we can all learn a lot from Gregory. If you liked what you heard here, please share this episode with anyone else you know that might be going through the startup life cycle, and check out his book. I have been using it, as you've heard, for our startup with the Story Cycle Genie, which is going to be launched here in a few short weeks, and I would love to have you a part of our startup life cycle. So if you're interested in joining, go register over at businessofstory.com/storycycle-genie. And when you do, you, as a bonus, will receive free access to our ABTs of Storytelling micro training course that you can use immediately to make all of your messages more clear, more concise, and more compelling so that you can grow your impact and your business in the world. I really appreciate you listening. Join us next Monday when we will have the host of the AI Hat podcast and AI pioneer, Mike Alston here. He's going to join us to talk about how AI is impacting sales, marketing, and brand storytelling for both good and perhaps bad. So check it out. Come on back next Monday. And until then, remember that the most potent story you will ever tell is the story you tell yourself. So make that one exceptional. Thanks so much for listening.